I visit Grace at the White Orchid Private Hospital every month. Grace is the sister of my boyfriend, Michael, and my childhood playmate. When she was young, Grace lost her parents and once shielded Michael from a kidnapper. Because of this, Eleanor, the matriarch of the family, decided that Grace would be her precious grandson's future wife and adopted her early on. It might seem like I'm the third wheel, taking Grace's place. But I don't care. Michael funded my education when I was on the verge of dropping out and provided priceless medicine to keep my mother alive. As long as Michael wants me to be his partner, I will do so without hesitation. Even if, in Michael's eyes, I am just one of Grace's substitutes. Michael has always been solitary, cold, and melancholic. Grace, like a little son, was initially despised by Michael and had no place in the family. Even though Grace was Michael's savior. Yes, Michael is that unfeeling. However, with the warmth of the sun, even the hardest ice will melt. Michael gradually accepted his fair-skinned sister. After being called brother thousands, even millions of times, his heart softened. Michael is handsome, wealthy, young, and promising, with a prestigious family background. He is the diamond bachelor in everyone's eyes. His first girlfriend was undoubtedly Grace. They defied their elders and teachers, secretly dating. Young lovers exploring each other's innocence, holding hands felt like eternity was within reach. Unexpectedly, a car accident left Grace seemingly forever bedridden in the hospital. And Michael's love seemed forever stuck in the summer of his 18th year. Maybe I'm really pathetic. Though I always tell myself, you don't love Michael, you're just grateful to him. But every time Michael chooses to spend the night at the hospital with the motionless Grace, instead of having dinner at my apartment, I can't help but shed tears. The year after Grace's accident, Michael found a second girlfriend. Her eyes were round and bright, much like Grace's when she smiled. So, Michael gave her a diamond necklace. And she became Michael's girlfriend throughout his 4 years of college. Michael's third girlfriend was an exchange student from England. Her name was Sarah, and her voice was as sweet as a nightingale, just like Grace's. By then, Michael didn't need to give gifts. This English sweetheart was naturally drawn to his excellence and became his new girlfriend. The fourth one was me. I still remember the first time Michael saw me. He said, "You look a lot like my first love." At first, I thought he was just flirting. Later, I realized that every word he said was sincere. I indeed looked the most like Grace. I rejected Michael when he proposed that I become his lover. Michael's excellence was intimidating, so it wasn't that I didn't like him, I just didn't expect him to belittle me so much. Lover, not girlfriend. Did accepting his support make me unworthy? However, dignity only stands firm when the price isn't high enough, and the situation isn't dire. Narrator, tone, sad. My mother was suddenly diagnosed with a serious illness, requiring a significant amount of money for treatment.
Vivian, tone, sad. Looking at my frail mother on the hospital bed, I took the address Michael had given me and went to find him.
It was then that I realized some people truly live in castles. From the gate to the front door, it took a 10-minute car ride. All words seemed to pale in comparison to the mountain of wealth before me.
Michael, tone, friendly hello, Vivian. Would you like to come in and sit for a while?
As if guided by an unseen force, I took Michael's hand and walked inside. That night, we were intimate for the first time. On the carpet in his room. I didn't even have the privilege of being on the bed. Yet, I had no right to object. 6 months later, Michael referred to me as his girlfriend for the first time in front of others.
Vivian and tone, dazed. I was momentarily dazed but quickly put on a flawless smile. Whether Michael was joking or not, I had to play along, or he would punish me.
The punishments sometimes came in the form of unbearable physical demands, and other times, he would disappear for weeks. However, the punishment that hurt the most was when he would abruptly leave and then spend time at the private hospital with Grace. I knew it was a punishment. And Michael knew that I understood everything. Vivian, I'll come over to your place for dinner tonight. I hadn't even opened my phone yet, but I knew it was a message from Michael. Although I was his girlfriend, I didn't dare to interact with him like a normal couple. With Michael, I tended to treat him more like a boss. So, I quickly replied.
Vivian, tone, hopeful, okay, I'll start cooking right away.
Michael preferred light flavors and disliked spicy food. So, despite my love for spicy dishes, I had been eating bland food for a year with him. Tonight's dinner was also prepared with a southern flavor in mind. An hour later, Michael, just off work, entered after punching in the code. I greeted him with a smile, only to be pulled into a long, firm kiss. From that kiss, I could tell he hadn't been drinking but had smoked a cigarette.
Vivian, tone, serious, weren't you trying to quit smoking? It's bad for your lungs.
Michael, tone, cheerful just one, and you could taste it.
I blushed, my heart racing uncontrollably. Before dinner, we spent 2 hours in the bathroom. Afterwards, Michael suddenly whispered in my ear.
Michael, tone, shy, let's get married.
There was no ring because Michael hadn't bought one yet. No notification to family and friends because Michael said it was just an engagement. I foolishly agreed to Michael's proposal, feeling surreal once I came to my senses. Especially when Michael, after dinner, went to the private hospital to accompany Grace. Driven by an inexplicable force, I, who hadn't slept all night, drove to the private hospital the next day. The doctors and nurses recognized me, and the caregivers left the room when they saw me, looking very reassured. I stayed in the same room with Grace, who was sleeping on the hospital bed, my heart racing. Looking at Grace's serene and gentle face, it was like seeing another version of myself.
Vivian, tone, sad, we really look alike. Do you know, Michael and I are about to get engaged. If you don't want this, wake up soon.
After saying the last sentence, I was startled by my own words. I finally understood that deep down, knowing I was Grace's substitute, I also saw myself as the intruder. All the happiness and beauty seemed stolen, snatched away. And Michael, the man about to be engaged to me, never loved me from the beginning. It was always the woman lying on the hospital bed. Grace. Today is my engagement day. It's not a grand event, only close family and friends are here. Due to the significant class difference, the guests from both sides found it hard to converse, making the atmosphere somewhat awkwardly quiet and orderly. My mother held my hand, tears in her eyes.
Mother, tone, serious Vivian. Michael is a rare gem of a husband. You must hold on to him tightly.
I felt like crying and laughing at the same time. I even suspected that Michael's engagement to me was for some business purpose. Otherwise, with such a disparity, dating might be possible, but how could we get married? My mother was about to say more when Michael entered, a flash of amazement in his eyes upon seeing me.
Mother, tone, cheerful, oh, what a good son-in-law, what a good son-in-law. You two have a chat. I'll step out.
Michael cupped my face, kissed my eyelids, and softly said,
Michael, tone, serious, let's go. The ceremony is about to start.
I paused, staring into Michael's seemingly always calm eyes, and slowly nodded. A marriage certificate, a joyous union. Please sign your names on the certificate. Instinctively, I looked at Michael, who quickly signed his name. I didn't dare to look any longer and was about to sign my name.
Grace, tone, shouting Michael.
The pen stopped mid-air. Grace. The first to respond wasn't Michael, but Eleanor, the elegant woman who had never shown me a kind face from the beginning.
Grace.
The male guests who knew some of the inside story were buzzing with whispers. I looked at Michael, only to find him rushing towards Grace, who stood not far away, smiling radiantly in the sunlight. The diamond ring on Grace's finger sparkled brilliantly. Watching their hands clasped together, my heart raced and my cheeks flushed.
A wild bird trying to become a phoenix, how ridiculous.
Summoning courage from who knows where, I grabbed the microphone from the nearby MC.
Michael, let's call off this engagement.
With that, I lifted my dress and stepped down from the platform. Someone seemed to be calling my name behind me, their voice mingling with the sudden rain, making it hard to hear clearly. Cutting through the crowd, I felt like a sharp blade, slicing through all the obstacles that had troubled me before. I resigned from Shengshire Group. Michael didn't approve it. But even though he was the president, I was determined to leave, and it wasn't up to him. I didn't return to the luxurious house Michael had prepared for me, but went to my small apartment that I had saved up to buy. This apartment was only 45 square meters, but it was compact and well equipped, with every corner meticulously arranged by me. Michael didn't come looking for me, but he bombarded my phone with calls. My WeChat was filled with his messages. I guessed he didn't come because he had to stay with Grace, who had just regained consciousness. How laughable that I once thought Michael was willing to marry me, that perhaps I could compete with Grace in his heart. But the truth proved that I was just a convenient substitute. I opened my phone and saw this message before deleting Michael's contact.
Vivian, don't be so willful.
Michael, thank you for taking care of me. But you are truly a fickle person.
Then, I removed Michael from my friend list. The avatar that I always hoped would light up with a red dot disappeared completely. For half a month, I didn't contact Michael. Without him, I experienced insomnia, overeating, and waking up crying in the middle of the night. It was just a simple breakup. Michael had a top-notch physique and face. I didn't lose out. Moreover, he helped cure my mother's illness and got me a degree from a prestigious foreign university. So, I still came out ahead. I kept telling myself this. Thus, although my mood never reached joy, I gradually stopped feeling despondent. Without Michael, I could still find someone even more handsome. Let their aristocratic sibling romance go to hell. However, Michael seemed to think otherwise. On the 16th day after the wedding, I had just finished work at my new company when I noticed my colleagues in the elevator excitedly discussing.
Hey, did you hear? There's a stretched Rolls-Royce downstairs.
I saw it when I went to buy milk tea. My God, it's the first time I've seen one of those.
There are also 2 bodyguards standing at the company entrance, like security checks. Their gaze is like X-rays.
I didn't pay much attention initially, just casually glancing at the 2 tall bodyguards as I exited the automatic doors. But that glance revealed something significant. Michael's excellence was intimidating, so it wasn't that I didn't like him, I just didn't expect him to belittle me so much. Lover. Not girlfriend. Did accepting his support make me unworthy? However, dignity only stands firm when the price isn't high enough, and the situation isn't dire. Rachel, Mr. Michael is waiting for you in the car.
I'm not foolish. I quickly realized what was happening and turned to leave.
The 2 bodyguards didn't immediately grab me but followed closely, speaking firmly.
Rachel, you're making things difficult for us.
Rachel, please cooperate.
I had no doubt that if I didn't comply, they would soon resort to force. Michael was capable of such actions, and his subordinates were trained to be just as audacious. More and more people were watching, including the female colleague who had been giving me a hard time lately, her expression complicated. To avoid making a scene, I decided to be sensible and walked towards the silent black Rolls-Royce. Inside the car, Michael closed the door as soon as I got in. A suffocating kiss overwhelmed me. I pushed him away with all my strength, catching a glimpse of the partition rising, which slightly alleviated my embarrassment.
Michael!
I cursed him with every foul word I could think of, but he swallowed them all. In the end, both our lips were injured.
Why did you suddenly leave the engagement party? Why did you block me?
Don't you know? Were you blind and didn't see my message?
What message?
Michael thought for a moment and remembered that Grace had suddenly felt unwell, so he had put his phone aside and hadn't seen any messages since. Now, he realized they might have been deleted.
You're such a fickle jerk.
Michael was silent for a moment, then grabbed my arm as I tried to open the door.
Vivian, it's not what you think with Grace. She's not well, and I
don't care about your deep sibling bond. Besides, don't deny it. You've always treated me as Grace's substitute.
Michael stared at me intensely, his grip on my wrist painful.
I admit, I did see you as Grace's substitute. But a long time ago, to me, Rachel was just Rachel. She wasn't anyone's shadow.
I laughed through my tears and shook off his hand.
All right then, let me ask you, do you still love Grace?
Is that an appropriate question? You're my fiancé, and Grace is just my sister now.
So you do know she's just your sister, and I'm your fiancé. For the first few days, I waited for you to come find me. Now, I just feel pathetic. Yes, in your family, how can a fiancé compare to a sister?
Rachel, calm down.
But since that's the case, I think we need to move up our wedding date.
What? I was utterly shocked, unsure whether to marvel at Michael's twisted logic or to regret saying something that gave him the illusion that we still had a chance. Ignoring his self-righteous monologue, I seized the opportunity to open the door and leave.
Rachel!
From that day on, a bouquet of pink Diana roses appeared on my desk every day, blooming vibrantly, though I wished I could throw them in the trash. I knew who sent them. Who else but Michael? During our time together, I never asked him for gifts. On one hand, I felt he had already helped me enough. On the other hand, I stubbornly believed that our relationship shouldn't be defined as kept. One day, as I was about to throw away the roses again, I saw an unexpected person standing by the elevator. In the cafe, Grace, dressed in a pure white cotton dress, looked like a high school student living in an ivory tower, her eyes filled with undisguised hostility.
I heard that Michael sends you a bouquet of roses every day, and you throw them away every day. Is that true?
You've done your homework.
Grace couldn't smile. She hated me, believing that I had stolen her lover. Little did she know, there were 2 other women before me.
You know, you and I look very much alike.
Grace almost stared me down as she said this. I guessed she wanted to see a look of despair on my face. Unfortunately, I didn't give her that satisfaction.
Don't be so subtle. In Michael's eyes, I am indeed your substitute. But now, I've broken up with him. In the past, I was in trouble, I was desperate, and I had unrealistic fantasies. Now, I have nothing to do with Michael. If you have any issues, don't come to me, go to him.
Grace felt a surge of anger and was about to throw coffee at me. I had already anticipated her move and dodged perfectly, splashing her back with a cup of warm coffee.
Rachel!
Everyone in the cafe turned to look, whispers rising. I calmly stood up, picked up my bag, and left, leaving Grace to deal with the manager who came over. Vivian, let's meet. I didn't know how many times I had seen this message and deleted it. I had already deleted Michael. But now, I had to endure his bombardment of messages. I had to admit, Michael was indeed impressive. For some reason, he had lowered himself to make Shengshire Group collaborate with the small private company I was working for. And he, as the CEO, personally led the negotiation team to our place. The boss appointed me as a member of the negotiation team. As an employee, to keep my job, I reluctantly agreed despite my unwillingness.
Vivian, the big boss of Shingshire is here this time, you can't mess up, keep smiling.
The boss was very dissatisfied seeing my sullen face. Before I could brush him off, Michael walked into the conference room surrounded by a group of people. Unexpectedly, Michael chose to sit opposite me, in a corner usually reserved for junior staff. Everyone was a bit surprised, but no one showed it on their faces. However, curious glances kept darting between me and Michael. After the meeting, the boss pulled me into the break room to question my relationship with Michael.
What's going on between you and Michael?
We're just friends.
As for being in a relationship, my boss probably wouldn't believe it. The boss still couldn't understand, as this collaboration with Shengshur was almost like charity. It seemed unlikely that it was just a friendship. Because of this, I became the liaison for Shengshur, handling all matters between them and our company. One day, Michael said there was something important and asked me to meet his assistant. I hesitated for a moment but agreed. When I arrived at the cafe and opened the door, I found Michael sitting there, sipping coffee. I wanted to turn around and leave, but Michael had me cornered.
My assistant does have business matters, but he's stuck in traffic and will be late.
I was silent for a moment and chose to sit down and wait. After a while, Michael suddenly spoke.
Grace has gone abroad. She now has depression and needs treatment overseas.
I crossed my arms and looked coldly at Michael across the coffee table.
You really are a piece of work, Michael.
Vivian, I know I wronged her, but I don't want to wrong you anymore.
I wanted to say something. But suddenly, I felt there was no need to say anything. I knew that from now on, I would never be anyone's shadow again. At this moment, James also arrived. Seeing the tense situation between Michael and me, he hesitated for a long time before daring to speak.
Rachel, can we discuss the business matters now?
Yes, let's get this over with.
After discussing business matters, I grabbed my bag and left.
Do you really have to avoid me like this?
Before going to bed, these two messages popped up on my phone simultaneously.
Do you really have to avoid me like this?
Sis, how about we go to the new Omakase place for some snow crab tomorrow?
The first one, without a doubt, was from Michael. He persistently harassed me, and I was almost used to it. I skillfully deleted the message to avoid seeing it. The second one was from my younger colleague, Patrick.
Although he was a junior, he had only joined the company 2 months after me. Why was he able to join outside the recruitment period?
I heard gossip from my boss in the break room, saying he was a super rich second generation, whose parents were friends with our boss, sending their son to our small company for some experience. The first day he saw me, Patrick and I had a bit of a clash.
That day, I was in a hurry and urgently called out to Patrick, who was in the elevator, not to close the door. But he ignored me and closed the elevator door, going straight up.
Later, I found out that he was my desk neighbor. Our desks were pushed together, making it almost impossible to avoid interaction. Just when I thought our relationship would remain strained, Patrick fainted in the break room due to low blood sugar.
Rachel, take Patrick to the hospital.
I ended up taking care of this big baby for a day. Since then, he started calling me sis in an increasingly sweet and clingy voice.
Sometimes, when I forgot to throw away the roses Michael sent me, he would remember to do it for me.
I'm not naive, I roughly understood his intentions. However, I wasn't sure if my heart was ready to accept someone new, so I pretended not to know and kept delaying. Actually, Patrick probably knew I was stalling. But he didn't seem to mind, continuing to show his affection towards me.
So, this time, I decided to go to dinner with him. At least, to make things clear.
Although I no longer loved Michael, the wounds in my heart hadn't fully healed, and I couldn't wholeheartedly love someone new yet. It wouldn't be fair to Patrick. The more enthusiastic he was, the more hesitant I became. The next evening, I didn't work overtime and went straight to the trendy Japanese restaurant with the eagerly waiting Patrick.
Rachel?
Michael?
I turned around, thinking it couldn't be such a coincidence. But it was indeed Michael calling me. Beside Michael stood a middle-aged woman in a Chanel suit. Upon seeing me, she bowed politely in a very Japanese manner.
How unlucky could I be to run into Michael everywhere? No, it was Michael who was haunting me.
Sis, is he your ex-boyfriend?
Patrick walked up with a smile, positioning himself between Michael and me, blocking Michael's cold gaze. I breathed a sigh of relief and forced a smile.
No, just a stranger.
With that, I pulled Patrick inside. Patrick took the opportunity to hold my hand.
Sis, I suggest you stay close to me to annoy that jerk.
I already said he's not my ex-boyfriend.
Patrick shrugged and didn't say anything more. I thought that would be the end of it. But I didn't expect Michael to be so shameless. He sat right next to me, sandwiching me between him and Patrick. I was speechless, and the appetizers tasted bland.
Vivian, I know I was wrong. What will it take for you to forgive me?
Michael's sudden words startled me, almost making me swallow a whole piece of Shizuoka melon. Patrick had gone to the restroom, leaving me alone to deal with Michael.
We have nothing to do with each other anymore. There's no need for forgiveness.
Is that guy your boyfriend now?
I wanted to say yes, hoping it would make Michael leave me alone. But thinking of Patrick's sunny enthusiasm, I answered truthfully.
No. But you don't have a chance either.
It's okay. I can wait. You used to wait for me, now it's my turn to wait for you.
Michael, I won't give up.
At that moment, Patrick returned, just in time to see Michael leaving. After a satisfying meal, Patrick and I left the restaurant together. Not far away, I saw Michael leaning against his car, smoking, his eyes as dark as the night.
Sis, I had a great time today. See you tomorrow.
Extra. Any?
Grace, I have something to do later. I'll come to see you in a few days.
Michael frowned as he stared at his phone, which kept showing a failed message. He couldn't stay in the hospital any longer.
Are you going to see your girlfriend, Michael?
She's my fiancée.
Grace's disappointment was visible, and tears fell as she forced a smile.
All right, you go ahead. Don't worry about me.
Michael hesitated. He knew Grace was very dependent on him and might cling to him a bit. Moreover, Grace had just woken up and needed company. With her parents gone, Grace only had their family left. Rachel had always been understanding, so it was better to cool things off with her for now. After a moment of consideration, Michael sat back down.
That's right. That Rachel is just a gold digger. Who knows how much money she's swindled from your Michael?
Grandma!
Michael knocked on the armrest in displeasure, feeling irritated. He pulled out a cigarette and left the room. Despite his earlier decision to cool things off with his fiancée, Michael dialed that familiar number. However, the call couldn't get through.
Rachel, you're being too willful this time.
Michael angrily turned off his phone.
What?
Grace, did you delete my messages?
Michael shook off Eleanor's restraining hand and asked Grace, who was sitting on the hospital bed, in a calm tone.
Delete messages? I don't know what you're talking about.
I checked the surveillance.
I told Grace to delete them. That woman insulted you, saying awful things.
Grandma, please stop talking.
Michael, why are you siding with Rachel? I'm your girlfriend. Is it because I was in a coma for 5 years? Has everything changed? Why? I just love you, Michael.
Michael's face turned grim, and he remained silent.
Grace, I'm sorry. You don't need to worry about the future. Our family will take care of you for the rest of your life. But I don't love you anymore. My heart belongs to Rachel.
Grace suddenly laughed, but tears continued to flow.
I don't want your apologies, Michael.
Michael didn't know when he fell in love with Rachel. He knew that at first, he only saw Rachel as a substitute for his sister, Grace. He admitted he wasn't a good person and that he had wronged Grace, but he didn't want to compromise himself either. So, he changed his female companions one after another. Each one resembled Grace. But in his heart, none of them compared to Grace. How could the affection bought with diamonds, jewelry, flowers, and bags compare to the pure and flawless Grace? He gradually grew tired of this collecting behavior. Until one day, as he left the library, he saw a striking figure in a bright yellow dress under the glaring sun, like a swaying forsythia flower. He stopped in his tracks, mesmerized by those captivating eyes. It took him a moment to realize that the girl had a small mole on her nose, just like Grace. He used his resources to investigate the girl. This was second nature to him, even though he hadn't graduated from college yet. Soon, Michael learned that her name was Rachel, a popular student in the business management department. She was proud, academically excellent, but came from a difficult background, with a mother suffering from cancer. This strong girl seemed on the verge of bowing to fate's harsh blows. So, he thought, such a girl deserved to be rescued by him. He used this justification to mask his desires and selfishness. Michael used less than honorable means to cage Rachel like a golden bird. He nurtured her, teased her, neglected her, and possessed her. But at some point, their roles reversed. Michael wasn't foolish, he noticed his different feelings for this relationship. He thought that only marriage could keep Rachel, his little bird, by his side. He lured her into the cage with benefits, but now he was the one trapped. Perhaps, from the moment he first saw Rachel, he had fallen in love with her at first sight. And Rachel resembling Grace was just a coincidence.